Hi, my name's Ari Flagle, and I'm fascinated with Boelens pythons. For the last 16 years, I've been traveling to the remote areas of West Papua New Guinea and Papua New Guinea, searching for this elusive snake, to study these animals in the wild, and to gain as much knowledge as we possibly can. So join me and my guests on the Boelens Python Roundtable. What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 11, I think it is. I think we're at episode 11. Another exciting episode of the Boelens Python Roundtable. I am your host, Ari Flagle. I'm glad to be back on camera. I figured we would set up this stage for discussing the most recent video I posted with the help of MJ. I did some really cool filming, some last minute filming stuff to share with everybody, kind of like what I see in like a super fast rundown of 8 minutes as opposed to 3.5 hours. And I'm bringing on a very good friend of mine, very close friend of mine, the Python breeding and boa breeder extraordinaire, Keith McPeek. We're going to discuss a bunch of that stuff today. So there you are, man. You hear me good?
Hey, what's up, Ari?
It's another day. I had to run down the street and get my 7-Eleven coffee. I don't know what it is. I've got a coffee maker. I've got fancy coffee from all over the world, but I like the gas station coffee. I don't know why.
Yeah,
it's weird.
I'm not going anywhere today. It's they're saying the real feel is 20 below zero up here right now.
And look at you, man. You're in a tank top. You're ready for Florida and everything, right?
That's because I'm working around the house.
I think I'm the only person that can get Keith McPeek on a podcast wearing a tank top. Eric and Owen are going to be very jealous.
Yes, they are.
So, and Teresa will probably like watching you paint the house in your tank top.
Yes.
Oh, so you've been good, man. How's things? We haven't chatted in a while. It's been, you had a giant surgery, and
yeah,
I'm so thankful that you're in front of the camera with me right now, chatting and stuff.
Teresa, I know, kept you well informed while surgery was going on.
Teresa always keeps me informed, whether it's well or not. She tells me what's going on. Yeah. That's what's so wonderful about your wife. She's an incredible person, and you are a very fortunate man to have somebody loving you so much.
I'm where I am now from recovery because of her. She don't let me slide at all.
No, good. Yeah.
That's why I'm back to, it's 9 weeks in surgery. I've been back to work for 5 weeks, and
it's insane.
I'm feeling really good. Like I say, I'm working around the house today, painting the ceiling and all. And
that's awesome.
I watched the video even again today.
Nice. Yeah. And for people that don't know what we're talking about, you had a pretty serious surgery that you had to take care of.
Yeah.
Open heart surgery, correct?
Yeah. I had a bicuspid valve. I was born with it. And in my lifetime, that caused an aneurysm on my aorta. So they gave me a cow valve. So my grandchildren are now mooing at me every time.
Nice. Yeah, right. I'm sure Anthony's loving that fuel for the fire, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. But
anyways, I'm very happy that you. I knew you'd be okay, but it's always hard when close friends have to deal with things like that, and we never know what can happen. And like I said, now look at you painting the house in a tank top when it's 20 degrees outside, and we're talking about Boelens pythons like we never stopped.
Yes, 100%.
So I figured,
keeps us going.
Yes, that's right. It keeps us going. So, I just got back, I don't know if a lot of people knew, but I'm always real quiet about it because I'm just whatever. I'm not a flashy guy. So it's like, I go. And I was, out at one of these areas that I have been visiting for years. And I was like, as I'm sweating and walking down these things, I'm like, I might as well film some of this stuff, even though I've got like thousands of hours of footage over the years. I've just never, I put it out a couple times and it really didn't get much attention. I don't know if it was the time or whatever, or how I did it. But, with this awesome opportunity that MJ has given me with having my own podcast, being able to post all this stuff and share all this stuff. He's like, hey, I sent it to him kind of jokingly. I think I actually sent it to you first. And I was like, what do you think? And you're just like, I just saw like the little dots on the phone as you were typing and it just wouldn't stop. And I'm like, okay, maybe that's cool. And MJ's like, dude, give it to me. I want to do something with this. So, it was, 3.5 hour hike in
and out in under 8 minutes. So I feel like it was just about the attention span that most people have to watch something.
Yeah, no, it was good.
And it couldn't have gone any better. And I just was like, I had my phone in my pocket, and I was just like, I'm just going to film some stuff, and people enjoy it. They enjoy it. And because I've been talking about it for so many years, and now people can actually, that are interested, can like see the reference of like, what I say when it's like this highland bog kind of environment, the low shrubbery, animals will just be sitting out, kind of doing stuff. And, sure as shit, it was, absolutely perfect. The snake gods were shining on me, and I walked right up, and there it was. So,
yeah, I really appreciated in the very beginning when you were showing how the cloud formation happens on those mountains. The cool thing is, it reminded me when Teresa and I went to Iceland, you could see that same kind of formation on the high mountains there.
Yeah.
So see it in that more tropical type environment was pretty cool to watch.
I never knew you went to Iceland before.
Yeah, Teresa and I went a year ago, 2 years ago. Yeah,
wow, I didn't know that.
That's great.
I've flown into Iceland, and I remember flying in and thinking to myself when I was looking out the window of how alien the topography looked.
Yeah,
when you were going in, it was just like something I've never seen. It was very cool. But yeah, no, it's interesting, like, because throughout the day, like, I've talked about it for so long. Like I've said, like throughout the day, the climate changes, where the cloud cover burns off, it comes down certain times of the day and everything. And I was just, I literally was just filming whatever I thought was interesting. I mean, I could have followed the kids running around outside, catching me crawfish and stuff. So, which I did not say, because I know Zach will probably cry knowing that I didn't identify all the crawfish rather, that we saw before we ate them. So he's probably going to be very sad about that. I have not told him that.
Yeah.
But
I also like the part when you were walking in, because your guide is just like, he's carrying a bottle of water behind him, barefoot, just trudging along, and you can hear you on the microphone.
Yeah. I know. It's so embarrassing, and I'm so over it now. I don't care anymore. It's like, and the funny part is, like, I have my backpack on with all my temperature gear and lighting gear and my camera stuff. Right. And then I've got 2 bottles of water on my back also. Cause it's like, I drink a lot of water, and my friends are like, I've known these guys, and, also too, like, one of my biggest things was I wanted their faces blurred out to keep them protected.
Yep.
Just because, it's not, we weren't doing anything that we weren't supposed to. It's just, they're simple people. They don't need, like an unnecessary attention and stuff like that. Right. So people were like, why is their faces bleed out? I was like, no, this is their safety. I don't want anybody bothering them. But, and this was his land, ancestral land that he's lived on for forever with his family. But yeah, no, it's always so funny. Cause like, they're just like, I mean, from the day they're born, they're walking barefoot through the jungle. Like it's nothing. They build these giant callus on the bottom of their feet, and their endurance is so much different. And they handle the lower elevation, or the higher elevation rather, the lack of oxygen in some of these spots. It's just a different entity. And he's just, walking like nothing. He was smoking a cigarette, I think, and also chewing some betel nut too. I brought them like 5 kilos of betel nut as part of my offering, as I always do. So they were very happy with me.
Yeah. No, it was interesting to watch that. Like you said, you really got to see what the trail was like too. Like you said, it looked in parts, it looked like you were walking just on 10-inch thick sphagnum moss,
Yeah. It's really an interesting, the way the mountains there are, it's very interesting. So like when you see us going in, it almost looks like game trails, but they're not. There's no game there that you would consider as like leaving a game trail.
Right.
So these are just people just kind of wandering around. A lot of times these people just wander in the mountains because there's not a lot to do. So they're opportunistic people. So whether they're going to take a walk for like 3 or 4 hours or a couple days to see if they can find, food or, something of interest of something like that. So a lot of these trails are made, or are just permanently in place because of so much traffic from just random family members walking back and forth, checking gardens and things like that. So And then we get into these areas where it becomes very like, virgin forest. So you can hear sometime in the background, you can hear some machete slicing stuff, and everything grows so fast there too. So, a lot of times, and we never take the same path. Like I've been to that area 3 or 4 times, but I've never been in the same path going into that area, which is interesting. Wow. So it's always like, I'm like, oh God, where are you taking me? Are we going straight up this time or what? Or, it's like, but no, those little bogs are always like kind of my halfway point, I always think. And it's interesting. It's like it looks like sphagnum moss just sitting on top.
It looks like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very interesting habitat. And we found snakes in close proximity to that kind of environment. But also, when we just, keep drudging through, like these guys are just kind of randomly wandering around, and then they'll come across like a snake shed or a urate or something. And they'll be like, oh, I'm going to remember that spot. I'm going to go check it out later, see what's going on. When we came out through that clearing, I could tell we were getting close because just the way the mountain was and the vegetation, I was like, okay, we're coming close to where a snake's.
Yeah.
But it's always absolutely just exhilarating when you come up on that. It's just amazing.
Yeah. You know what? I had a question is when you first started, you were on, for lack of a better term, like a plateau, and then you were pointing to the mountain behind you.
Mm-hmm.
And with Oenpelli python in Australia, like we always go to the escarpments to try to see one.
Yeah.
But you hear these reports of them being found just crossing the road, kind of like on the flatland like that.
Yeah.
Where you were standing, would they ever see a Boelens in that area?
Not in that area. I've never heard of one in that area, but excuse me. And that road there, I mean, I've been to this village years. And that road, probably within the last 4 or 5 years is new. That all used to be, I mean, we had to hike all the way up into that village. And that was that was my first really, really intense. It was like a 7-hour hike.
Wow.
Years ago, before, they started, kind of clearing things out, and they're, obviously they're making more roads everywhere.
Right.
But thankfully, the animals are still, the area that is at is in a protected area in the sense of, the families are in charge of that area. So like, you can't just show up. If you show up, you're going to get killed, basically. So it's, there's fencing they put up, these big logs and things like that. So you have to have, very serious permission to get in there. But there is an area that I know of that I am in discussion with visiting soon, hopefully. That's not in my general area that I've been visiting. It's maybe, I'd say, I don't know, maybe 500 or 600 miles west, as a crow flies, essentially. And the area is really, really plentiful with these snakes. And I've gotten video and I've gotten photos of Boelens crossing the roads. And one of the main reasons, and fortunately, in this area, the people, some of the people are eating them just because it's an opportunity.
Right.
But a lot of the people that are in these little communities, are either afraid of them or they respect them as something as like a mountain spirit or entity of some sort. So they leave them alone. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, my friend, he sends me like 5 or 6 messages every couple of weeks. And he's like, hey, look at this, look at this, look at this. And I've got photos of like, actual like roadkill Boelens. Wow. Which is horrible to think of, but it's, it's like the animals are trying to disperse themselves out from some of these areas that they're making roads in.
Right.
And, but one of the other interesting things that I like is the fact that there are no Westerners and very limited local indigenous people in these areas, because obviously there's local communities, but there's not a lot of outsiders, and there's not a lot of regrowth in these areas because it is a really, really full area of the OPM, which is like their militant guerrilla groups that are anti-Indonesia, and they're also like killing locals as well. So they're Papuans that are part of the Free Papua movement, and they have access through, trade and killing of like military weapons. And, basically it's like a guerrilla group, and they inhabit certain areas to try to gain control of certain stuff. So that area is very, very thick, full of these militants, these guerrilla guys, the OPM. And that in itself protects a lot of these snakes, because there are very few people that are going to these areas, including the locals. So they don't even want to go there because it's not safe. They'll get killed. So there's a lot of snakes that are there, which is great. So I'm working away with one of the military, the Indonesian military groups that is there, to have access to get into some of these spots safely. So I was kind of working on that as well on this last trip too, to try to figure out, because I really would like to see if the population numbers are like substantially greater than these other areas because of this factor. So to answer your question, yes, I have seen, but not in this area.
Who's cutting the roads in? The locals themselves, the military, or?
Sometimes it's both. Sometimes the governments they send in these huge, road plowing machines and things like this stuff. And they're just making more access for areas to go through the mountains, basically. So it's, for like transshipping things and, just supply and demand on stuff, bringing in materials and things like that too. A lot of the times what they do is, and it's got to be ridiculously hard work, is they have locals stack river rocks and throw them into these big dump trucks. So that's their job, is just collecting river rocks and throwing them in these dump trucks. And then they drive the dump trucks through these roads and they just dump them everywhere. So it's the infrastructure is interesting for sure. But this area is really dangerous. And I was told it's very dangerous by the locals. They don't want to go. But I have a military friend. He's like, oh yeah, I'll take you. Then I'm like, oh, okay, well, we'll see. So, but yeah, it'd be really interesting to see, and just see if there's any, variation. I don't think there'd be any kind of genetic variation really, or morphological difference,
that's
being
the next question.
Being that close. Not sure, but who knows? We'll see. But yeah, no, the video is really cool. It really depicts pretty much everything there. I mean, like the behavior of the animals, they're very, you can see how confident and how calm that snake is just sitting there, with no care until I get up to a certain, distance. And I think it was about 4 feet where she kind of cued in on me. She was sleeping and she kind of woke up and saw me, and I was like, all right, I'm just going to finish taking some photos. Leave you alone,
Right. She seemed to be, like you said, as far as the calm demeanor, and you would think that a snake that doesn't, you go both ways, I guess, because you look at the Galapagos where the animals aren't afraid of people because they haven't seen people and don't know they're a threat or whatever. Or it could go like, oh, that's something new, I better get the hell out of here,
Exactly. So, I mean, they're the predominant predator when they get to a certain size there, aside from, a person, obviously. And then, people would either collect them to sell them, or they'd collect them to eat them. They don't typically collect adults to sell. So they would try to take an opportunity to eat them, which is, it's what it is. But one of the things that really was like mind blowing to me was, when I got there, I just kind of threw my stuff on the ground and I told my guys, like, hey, go smoke a cigarette, go drink some water, go lay down, go rest. I'm going to be out front here watching the snake for a few hours, know? And, so I sat there for about a good hour photographing her and taking temperatures and things like that. And then overall, the environment, I was kind of visually looking at everything and all that stuff, just to kind of make notes in my mind of how things were. And for the most part, everything was pretty much accurate to what it's always been. But one of the really cool things that I saw the behavior on the female was, once she kind of woke up and took notice of me, she was kind of like, okay, what's this person doing? Like, what's going on? And I was about 4 or 5 feet away from her at that time. And I didn't want to bother her, obviously. I wanted her to do what she was doing naturally. And and the nice thing now is we have all this data technology where it's like I can stand 10 feet away and I can record whatever I need. I don't even need to touch the animal, which is great.
Right.
Because I don't want to bother them.
Right.
And so I watched her turn around, and then she started going back. She started going away, like leaving. And I was like, okay, I wonder where she's going to go, because I know about 10 feet away is her nest. And I know because of the season, she's going to have eggs. So she was probably out warming herself up, as they do every day or every morning, to go back to those eggs to generate that temperature, because the night was chilly, and and she's just making sure her eggs are good. So I watched her go. She did a loop around herself, went into some vegetation, crawled through all this dead debris, and then another, in a total of, like I said, roughly 10 feet. 10, maybe a little bit more, maybe 10, 14 feet, and then went all the way back on her nest, coiled up around her eggs, and sat there with her head on top of her eggs, just watching me. So in that amount of time, it was so cool, because like there was that thought process, that instinctive behavior of, okay, I'm going to flee now. I'm warm. I have to go protect my eggs. And no matter how far away she was, she followed that scent trail that she left all the way back in that distance, which was substantial from where she was,
right,
all the way right back onto her nest, coiled on her eggs, and sat there without, because there was a new stimuli, which was me there.
Right.
So she was already pre-focused, which just blew my mind. I still think it was probably one of the coolest things I've ever seen.
And when she went in back on the eggs, I was kind of shocked at how shallow the nest was. Like I always envisioned it being, 3 or 4 feet deep under the earth.
Yeah, and a lot of times it is. The way the depression in that mound. So it was hard to see the angle of it, but it was pretty steep. But like she was pressed back in there pretty good. And there was a lot of vegetation that had fallen too. So I only assumed that when she moved in and out, she kind of moved some debris away. She was probably in there maybe a foot and on it. But I mean, for the most part, I've seen snakes that are down like 2-3 feet down into a spot, and you've got to measure them down with your arm. Or sometimes I've gone up to my shoulder and I have just barely can touch them. But obviously too, it depends on the burrow she took over as well. So, but it was interesting that it was more exposed. But the way the sun, I mean, obviously it was positioned perfectly. I mean, the sun was warming the nest, but there was vegetation in front of it. That big dead palm tree essentially kind of swooped over a little bit. And then she went out and basked and came back. So she was really thin, obviously, or thinner, because she had, I didn't count the eggs. I didn't want to, like I said, I didn't want to bother her. I didn't want to interrupt her at all. I just wanted to photograph stuff. But yeah, it was really a really nice, it was a really beautiful scenario that I was able to capture and share with people to kind of get an idea more of like what they do.
Yeah. It was killing me to try to figure out what she did in a rain event, like in that type of a nest, but you said the back behind her was kind of steep. So that probably provided.
Yeah. It was at a pretty decent incline. Cause I remember I was leaning forward and my feet were all leaning forward too. And then I just was like, okay, I'm just going to go down on my knees and my stomach. So I was just laying on my knees and stomach taking photos. And it was more comfortable. So I don't know, it was probably about, it was a pretty decent grade. So I've never seen a nest in all the times I've seen animals that is a flat ground nest like this. Yeah. There's always an incline to it. And for that reason, obviously the couscous that make these burrows, they don't want it to flood inside. Right. So they're probably, when they're digging it up, they're packing all that dirt out to the mouth of the nest entrance. So it kind of almost makes a lip or a berm. And that's how I just envisioned this. But it was also, so where and I'm trying to remember the video, like where the palm tree, the top of it was hanging. Obviously, it wasn't like drooping over, right? Which would have been really nice to see. But it obviously, it had some big leaves hanging on it. So whatever rain was coming down was going off that and then going down the, there. And it was, a lot of it probably was absorbing into that really kind of spongy kind of.
I was going to ask you if it puddles generally, or probably just like soaks right into the ground as
it's got to soak right in there. Cause I mean, it was just like, and then with the combination of the heat, you know, and the sun and all that stuff, it just makes this perfect, just like incubator. Like, I mean, it was, and she, you know, she'll go off the nest, you know, maybe once or twice. Obviously she's not going to eat in that state, but she'll definitely drink. But yeah, it was awesome. It's always exciting whenever I see them. I've been seeing them I've seen them so many times, and that's not to like put a feather in my cap. It's just like, I've seen so many of them. Each time I see a nest, it's like the first time.
Yeah.
Just being able to see them, because just the behavior and just the sheer awe of the animal just being there, you know.
That clearing looked not substantial, but I mean, considering how thick everything else was that you were kind of walking through, is that typical location that they look for, is something that has, you know, availability for basking and whatnot?
Well, okay, so that's interesting you should say that. So now that I think, I've never seen an area, no, I take that back. I've seen an area like that twice now. So this is the second time. For the most part, there's usually like an area that's like half of that size that the animal come out and bask. But that one was like, obviously there was more, the temperature on that area, that slope was what she wanted. So she went further out to bask, but they're not going to go very far. I mean, that was probably the furthest away, because she wants to be able to jump back on her nest right away when there's an issue. But, and then I've seen an animal in a tree outside of a nest basking, like up the tree and like hanging.
Right.
But for the most part, like that was the picture perfect, like scenario, like there, just with like the way the background was and that kind of like open, like little spot with all the vegetation. And I mean, you could have dug underneath that for days, probably, and never hit ground. It was just like vegetation over and over and over on top of stuff like that.
Did you know where the nest was or not until she started crawling back to it, and then you found the nest?
No, so I didn't focus on the nest right away. I focused on her because I saw her, and I knew that, you know, because of the season, there's eggs, you know, and I knew that, you know, 99% of the snakes I'm going to come across are going to be incubating eggs. So I was like, okay, her nest is going to be close. So basically, when she left, I kind of followed her from a distance to see where her nest went, and that's when I saw it, and she went right back down underneath there. But I was surprised it was like that exposed up on the top.
Yeah.
But I mean, she covered those eggs pretty well when she went on. I don't think it was a big clutch. Like I said, I didn't mess with her or anything like that. I kind of did a little peek, and then and just like photos and temps and stuff like that. But yeah, it was awesome, man. It's like, you know, I'm always like, I'm out there hiking. I mean, because I enjoy hiking and stuff, but like when I'm out there, I'm just like, I'm like, are we close? Or we get close? We get close, and then all of a sudden I see her, and I'm just like, it's just like an adrenaline rush, you know. And it's just like, there it is, you know. It's like you forget everything. It's just like focused right on it.
And when you were walking in, I couldn't really tell in the video. I thought I heard some birds, but I couldn't really tell. Right?
Yeah, there's all sorts of like little doves and all sorts of I don't even know what the species are. I'm so not a bird guy. I love birds, but I should be a bird guy for that area. I have a photo of a bird on one of the last couple of trips I took that it was actually right above a nest, and one of the guys shot it to take it back, eat it. And I think I sent it to you. It was like a fruit dove or something. It was really pretty. I've got it in the new book, so people will be able to see it. But yeah, there's all sorts of like in the morning, it's like, it sounds so beautiful because you've got like the breeze coming through off the mountain, and you've got all these like kind of fruit doves, and you've got bird of paradise in the distance. So there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of activity going on in the mornings. Most things kind of just like start up early and then pitter off, you know, at a certain time.
Yeah. Bird of paradise. You mentioned that, and I just was like, ooh.
Right.
One of those. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, no, it was cool. It was, it's always an incredible experience. And then just being with my friends out there, it's like, you know, I'm in a hut, you know. This one was my friend has actually built quite a nice little house. I mean, it's pretty basic, but It's made out of like steel outside, like corrugated steel that he's gotten, and he's kind of like hodgepodged like things together. And the funny thing was, so I had years ago, I'd sent one of my friends a bunch of money to build me basically a hut like out in the mountains, so I could use that as like my primary source just to go to, you know.
That's
and yeah, right. And that was interesting. And I got to visit it like twice. And then after that, the area became unsafe because there was some OPM issues. So they didn't go to this area anymore. So, but it was funny because like as a joke, I was at like, was it like Hobby Lobby, I think it is. And I had one of those little wooden plaques, you know, and it said like live, laugh, love or something. And I stuck it inside of my hut. And it was funny, like this last trip, when I was there, my friend pointed it and he. You hear me? We lost you for a second.
Yeah, you froze up for a little bit, but
okay, we're good. We're back in business now. So, but yeah, no, it was a great trip. It's always fantastic to go.
Yeah, I was super impressed. I've seen a lot of your pictures. I've seen some of your videos and all, but this last video, I don't know, it really gave you the way you did it. Just just let you know like where you start, what you're seeing, what you're encountering, and then the animal at the end. It was pretty awesome. I really liked that video.
Oh, I'm glad. I was like literally I was like flying at the seat of my pants essentially. You know, I just had my phone with me and I'm like I was walking outside just kind of like taking in the environment, and I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to start taking some videos and put it all together and see if it comes out nice. And you know, it's I literally just with my cell phone turned on the side and I'm like walking, you know, and do stuff like that. You know, I've had like GoPros and all this stuff, and it's just like my phone. It's so much easier to use our phone. We're so pre-programmed to use our phones for everything nowadays. So it's like, oh, okay, great, time for my phone. But no, I'm glad you enjoyed it. And you know, I'll do another video too on one of my next trip because I think people really enjoyed it. And it's one thing talking about it, but it's such another thing being able to visually experience it off of that. Because it's like I can say, oh yeah, they come out from 10 a.m. to 11:30 or whatever to bask, and everyone's like, oh okay, you know. And then, but I'm showing you that there they are. It's 10 o'clock. They're out basking, or you know, they're. You know, this is the substrate, you know, this is what the material looks like that they make their nests out of. And, you know, this is typically the environment and stuff like that.
I know you're laser focused on the Boelens, but I think if you could get shots of even the crayfish or any bird or any other living thing while you're going into your research areas, that would be awesome for.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and you just reminded me something, too, that I didn't even talk about until now. Thank you, Keith, master boa python breeder. It might have been I think I was distracted by your tank top. That's what it was. No, so babies, when the babies hatch and leave the nest. So one of the things I've always wanted to know what the babies feed off of, and historically and through conversation, we've thought, you know, they eat little rodents, they eat frogs, they eat even little bats and things like that or whatever. But I have a really, really good answer for this now, and I'm pretty sure this makes up a huge portion of their diet when they're babies. And I could be wrong. This is just a visual observation from this last trip. So one of the things that I saw that was really cool, and I thought I got it on video. I might have to zoom in on some of it to see it, but when the female was out in that big kind of like clearing pasture-ish thing, she was, like I said, you know, anywhere from 10 to 14 feet away from her nest. There were probably 6 or 7 little teeny tiny ground skinks crawling all around her, basking in that intense light. And obviously, you know, you go outside and, you know, it's nice and hot. You see little lizards crawling around, but they were like in abundance going in and out of that dead vegetation. And then when I followed her back to the nest, I saw more in that same area crawling in and out of the nest area.
That's huge. So, you got to get pictures of whatever they are.
Yeah. So I have photos. I have photos of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because on my trip before this, or no, was it trip before this? Within the last year, I think, when I took Ryu with me, I still can't believe I did. She went out and she was collecting or catching little lizards with the local kids, because the kids brought her a lizard. And she was like, "Oh, could you bring me another one?" And of course, when you ask that, they bring you like 1 million of them. So she was out there like releasing all these little ground skinks, but I took photos of what they are. So, but yeah, it was super cool because they were going like in and out of the nest, and they're coming out of all that dead vegetation and everything at the base of that palm tree. So I guarantee babies are eating little tiny skinks
for sure
in the wild. Now, we don't need to be feeding them little skinks in captivity because they do fine on quail and mice, but
right.
Regardless, as a natural behavior, I feel pretty confident they feed off these little tiny little skinks.
Yeah, no, because that's always been a big question. So I think that's a huge bit of information right there.
Yeah, and you kind of think about it too, like skinks have like, like they have like this kind of really erratic kind of like little jittery behavior when they're moving and all this stuff. So I'm sure that the babies really cue in on that.
In the Northern Territory of Australia, up in Kakadu and all that, the ground is alive. I want to say alive because you see them quite often. Little skinks like that. I know exactly the movement you're talking about, and that's where like Children Eye and all these other pythons start out, and I'm sure it's a dietary thing for them.
I love like when you use that word, like that reference, like when the ground is alive.
Yeah,
I love that because it's like I remember as a kid, being from Arizona, like I'd go out in the desert and I'd go looking for all sorts of shit. I don't know, rocks and fossils and snakes and whatever I could find. And I remember just sitting down like under big like creosote bush or something like that, and you just be quiet. And if it's really sunny, you'll start seeing the ground just kind of wake up, and all sorts of little creatures and things like that are crawling around. So it's always like exciting to see that. But I just remembered the thing with the little ground skinks, which I was like,
awesome.
I was like, holy shit, look at those little skinks that are all over. And they're just crawling all over, and they're, all this and that. And, but yeah,
That's huge.
It was super cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah, no, it was pretty awesome. I'm just glad everybody, I was really surprised that, so many people really enjoyed it. It was, cause it didn't take, but nothing for me to do. It was just like,
it was good.
It was cool because like, I wanted people to experience that kind of like, hey, we're here. This is what we're getting ready to see. And there's an animal right there as I've portrayed it for years now, saying like, this is what they do. You can see it now.
Yeah.
And I think that was huge for a lot of people to be able to, and I don't think it means like changing what they're doing per se, but it gives a better look of like what they're like, in situ, like where it's like, this is behavior of what they do. This is what they normally do.
Right. Well, we know that in captivity, we treat animals way different, and they do better because we're treating them in a captive environment versus how they live in nature. But there's nothing like seeing how they survive in nature,
Yeah. And a lot of times I like question myself. I'm like, are we giving them the best that we could in captivity?
Right.
Like, it's like we try to do everything, but obviously trying to replicate nature is so difficult on a lot of different levels. I mean, obviously we have done incredible things in herpetoculture, through the years and years of keeping animals. But, when you have an animal that's natural, its natural instinct is to do this, and this in the wild, and then we are working with the same animal in the wild, I do feel like we lose a lot of natural behavior from, captive bred animals sometimes, things like that. I mean, it's not to say it's a bad thing. It's like, we're having success with them, but you wouldn't be naturally experiencing something like that in the wild, or in captivity versus the wild on stuff like that too.
Yeah. And we think we give them variation because we provide a temperature gradient every day, but it's the same temperature gradient every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we change seasonally, but I mean, literally every day is different for them. They encounter something different every day.
You're 100% right. Yeah. It's like, it's never, I mean, even with the data, like the data loggers I put out there, it gives a base of like what the temperature and the humidity is throughout the year. But like you said, every day is different. Things happen, nature is unpredictable. It's, nature is raw and nature don't give a fuck. That's what it is. Yeah. So it's like, everything changes. And, I don't know. Sometimes I wonder, it's like, oh, should I keep my lights off today? Should I do something different? It's like that. But it's like, when we're dealing with captive animals, we want our animals just to basically feed, defecate, grow normally, have no health issues. Is it like, but obviously one of my dreams, eventually where I end, wherever I end up permanently, is to build a greenhouse for my Boelens and create a huge outdoor naturalistic thing for them to just to see their behavior. That's what I want.
Yeah, that'd be very cool.
I mean, it would be wonderful to reproduce my animals. I mean, and obviously that is a long-term goal, but like, I think we talked about this is like, from what I've been able to witness and observe firsthand and the things that I've done with my personal animals, like, if I don't breed them, I'm not going to be heartbroken.
Right.
It's just being able to watch them do what they do is so
I
much
have
fun.
animals in my collection that are the same way. I don't care if I breed them or not. I just really enjoy what they do every day and watching them. The Lanthanotus come to mind. I just love watching those guys. They do their thing every day, and just chilling and watching it is good enough for me.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I think what it does is it also allows us to think and kind of process ideas and theories. Sometimes we go a little far on some of it, but it's fun, I mean, it helps us, brainstorming, I think, is such an important thing, not just with reptiles, just with anything, any projects you're doing, but with herpetoculture and stuff like that, I think it's an important aspect to be able to sit down and look at the animal and really try to understand as much as we can and really base that off of how our husbandry is, if that's working. Every time I go to these areas where I see wild specimens, I'm always like thinking in my head, it's like, okay, is my cage adequate enough where I'm replicating this? But do my captive animals that have been raised in captivity their entire life, will they benefit from this kind of a natural husbandry?
Right.
No, it's a tough situation,
It is,
what to do. But I'm just glad I was able to do it, and I'm glad it came out okay, where it wasn't just me fumbling all over the place. I did fall for 1 second on video where my foot went down into that mud, like down to my knee.
Oh yeah.
And but
I think I heard you curse a little bit.
Yeah, I was like, I was like, and I'm glad I didn't eat shit on that. I did it before I filmed going down this, like, because it's always like, I mean, like I said, I love hiking. I love being in nature. And, I love being in the highlands when I'm hiking because it's just so beautiful and just so quiet and everything. But like, God, it's like these little paths they take. It's just like this running slick water over these little rocks. And it's just like mud everywhere. And it's just like, I slide down it, it's like, and they're just laughing at me. It's like, I have to fall at least once,
Yeah.
As long as
I know even locally here, when Teresa and I are hiking and I go off the trail, and you're in leaf litter and stuff, and you don't see what's under that leaf litter.
Oh, God, yeah.
Like you get back on that trail quick.
You're like, maybe that wasn't such a good idea.
Yeah.
Right? I know, it's crazy. Some of these spots where they're at, it's just, I mean, it's a perfect environment for them. Nobody goes there. I mean, locals will wander around, but it's relatively safe for the species to be. And, nobody's going to want to go to some of these spots because it's just, for what? That's the thing.
Right.
And like I said, she didn't have a huge clutch of eggs that I could see compared to some of the other females I've seen. Like, I remember, like, the very first female I saw had this massive clutch of eggs where, like, she could barely cover the clutch with her coils. But this female here, and she was probably she was close to maybe 8 feet, I'd say, but she wasn't like super big. She was probably around the size of, I don't know, maybe like an apple on the biggest portion of her body.
Yeah.
And obviously she had lost weight because she had passed eggs. We just, took measurements or temperatures and all that stuff and photos and just kind of said, all right, have a nice day. Good luck. Hope everything hatches, kind of thing like that. So,
yeah. Wonder if they ever have to worry about anything raiding their nest.
I don't know. I could probably see like insects, like ants.
Oh, there you go.
Being a killer. There are ants there, obviously, ants everywhere. I could see, that's how I've always wondered too, like, because like when the babies hatch, like, you know, you've got umbilicus that's in the nest, you've got all that egg smell, and I always wonder if like there's any like ants that come in there that just start eating all that stuff up. But I've never seen anything like in the nest, which is interesting. So, but yeah, as far as rating goes, I don't think there's anything there. They're pigs, but they're domesticated pigs that are down there that walk around wild. I don't think I've never seen pigs sign or track up into those areas where the nests are. I think they stay pretty localized in some of the villages.
I could see maybe a bird species, you know, if it's unguarded or something, and it can get in there maybe.
Oh yeah, definitely for neonates. I could see, because there's several birds of prey I've seen there. I mean, I'm sure a bird of prey would snag a baby in a heartbeat,
right?
But obviously, I don't think an adult, because there's like some type of hawk I saw, and then there's a New Guinea eagle as well, which is pretty big. But I've never had like a conversation with the locals where they've told me that, you know, like a bird's come down and eaten an adult.
Yeah.
Because the babies usually disappear really quick once after, you know, they stay in the nest for a short period of time to shed first. And there is also, now there's a lot of supporting data that I brought forth to say that females are displaying maternal behavior, where the babies are staying after they shed. They're staying around the nest area for a bit, forever. How long, I don't know yet, but something I've been working on to kind of put together some papers with that, where it just kind of discusses that, because that'll be the first record for the species, because I know rock pythons will display that.
Yeah.
And there was a paper that came out. I'm sure there's a lot of snake species that do it. We just have not, you know, been fortunate enough to observe it or collect the data and something like that.
Yeah, you know, I was just thinking too, being able to see in that video the ground cover and stuff like that. It kind of makes sense that they are that rust red color as a baby, because that would blend in like so great with that. Where they maybe could cryptically bask, you know, through the leaf litter or whatever else, and not really be exposing themselves.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I know there's a lot of the soil there is really rich in iron. And it's really acidic. It's volcanic areas, so it's very high in iron. And I've often wondered if that kind of a reddish color is one of the reasons why the babies are that kind of color as well.
Yeah.
Because obviously it would help with camouflage and such. And it's interesting too, like now that I'm thinking of, like, you know, because I've known people who are like, oh, how long does it take for the species to finish its, you know, adult color change, you know? And, you know, in captivity, I've seen usually within the first couple of years, you know, the animals will change. Obviously, some animals are faster than others, but in the wild, I've been sent a couple photos. I've got them in the book too, where there was a DOR Boelens python that was, I don't know, about like 5 feet, and it was still red, like still going through a change. So I'm wondering, obviously, if is it going to be more of like a dietary control, like where you know, the feeding basis is going to be what's going to be controlling that. But I don't know, because obviously frequency of feeding in the wild is a difficult thing to achieve. Even with trail cameras that I put up and stuff like that, being able to photograph or film one that's feeding would be pretty incredible.
Yeah, that'd be wild.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. Because I would just like to know like how frequently they're feeding, and I don't think they feed that often, honestly. With how the habitat is and the environment, and then just their behavior. I mean, it'd be a very cool study to see how to basically do that. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I mean, I had a picture pop up the other day of a diamond python that ate a wallaby, and I'm thinking about like if a Boelens ate a couscous.
Yeah,
I mean, we probably only need like 4 meals a year, you know, and they'd be fine.
Exactly. Like, I mean, that's a big meal, you know.
Yeah,
they're not going to go anywhere, and there's not a lot of like, you know, everything is so in tuned out there, like with behavior and its time that it's out and this and that. I mean, The couscous is the only animal in that area, that elevation, aside for some larger rats or rodents and some birds, that would be the primary food source for these snakes. I mean, they're not going to go past a certain elevation, and in that elevation, when you go past it, it starts getting really, really cold, and then you've got tree kangaroos that are up there, and that's much larger of a prey item. I mean, if anything, they would grab it and coil it, but they wouldn't be able to eat it. And it's way out of elevation range for these guys, for where they'd be. As far as records go, I'd be very surprised if one was up that high.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's cool, man. I don't know. Some people ask me, it's like, oh, why is it just Boelens pythons? I was like, I'm just fascinated with them. They're just, it's just such an interesting snake to me.
Yeah.
It has every quality that you could ever want. It comes from a really cool, kind of mysterious place. It's visually stunning. They're difficult to keep, still.
Yeah.
It's thing. And I hope that stays. I really do.
Right.
Because it'll just kind of keep the allure and the mysticism, I guess you could say. I mean, crazy coffee words this morning, mysticism, and stuff like that. But no, it was a lot of fun to do it, man. It's I still need to try to bring you with me one of these days.
Yeah, you got to get rid of those militants over there first.
I'm gonna have to dye your hair. I don't think I've ever seen somebody with hair like you. Yeah, right. We'll get you a really good tan.
Yeah.
It'll be good. But so I'm trying to think. I'll probably end up doing some more filming on my next trip, just because people really enjoyed it, and get some footage of stuff, maybe particular things that people are really interested in. Obviously, I know I'll post stuff up all the time about like nest temperatures, egg temperatures in the wild, and stuff like that. And then people will be like, "Hey, what are the temperatures in the nest? What are the temperatures of the eggs?" And I'm like, "I posted a million freaking times." It's like, come on. So it's like, so I might like get like a few requests, ask some people for some requests of what they're particularly interested in for wild data, or anything like that.
But I really truly think, like you had mentioned, the crawfish and stuff, anything like that, I think that's from that area, people that are into Boelens python are going to find fascinating.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. Exactly right. Like those little skinks, that was super cool. I still want to see one of these big rats that they were telling me about, that I saw these like little teepee structures. Because I haven't seen any rats or anything like that. But I don't walk around at night. It's just so, I mean, some people are like, oh, why don't you go out at night? It's like, man, it's not safe. I'm not a local. If you're a local, okay, you can do it. But go. One of those things.
Yeah.
But so there's a lot of cool stuff that I'm working on, and I'm hoping to share on this channel with people. And if anybody's just interested, just ask. I mean, I'm pretty transparent with stuff.
Oh yeah.
And try to do that, and maybe some people will come up with an idea of some specific things they're looking to kind of see, or get particular data on from wild stuff that I'm doing, that I've probably posted or shared before, but they want to see it again because they're whether they're new or not. Because I do know I speak with a lot of new people, as well as on the forum group that we have.
Right.
But yeah, I'm just happy to be back, man. It took me a while to get adjusted. It took me a couple of weeks to get adjusted back being in Texas. I don't know why. I'm usually pretty good.
Yeah. A little jet lag.
Yeah, I don't know. It wasn't jet lag. It just like couldn't get back to normality. I don't even know what's normality anymore in the U.S. But I'm not going to get into that. But it just was hard for me just to kind of get back to the routine of things and stuff like that, with where I was at, and what I was dealing with, and all that stuff too. And it's always different too, because like when I go, I'm always by myself, so it's like I don't have to worry about protecting somebody, or it's just like myself. I just have to worry about, it's like, okay, I got to get from this point to that point. I'm not having to chaperone anybody or anything like that. So it's
no, I get it. Like when I go to Australia, even, I mean, you really tune out your normal life. Like people aren't getting you on the phone. There's no way that you can check in on work. There's you're not taking care of anything. You can't do anything but just be yourself and do what you're doing because you're there,
Yeah. And I think a lot of people forget how to do that. And it takes a little bit to get adjusted with it. I mean, obviously, like when you're out in certain places and you can't get a signal, they're like, oh, what am I going to do? It's like, well, just enjoy being where you're at, where nobody can reach you, It's like we got enough people back home to take care of the issue if there's an issue,
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't know. There was I will tell one story before we wrap this up that I haven't gotten to tell yet. It was interesting. So one of the things that I obviously am fascinated with is anthropology and cultural ethnographics and all that stuff and big fancy words. And one of in the area that I basically is like my base, it's like the city essentially, but it's a really rundown city. There are mummies that are still there that are preserved by different from the Dani tribe. They used to do it more, but there's only 4 mummies that are left that are, several hundred years old. That's what they tell me. So I've seen 2 out of the 4 mummies, and then I saw the 3rd out of the 4th this last trip, which was really cool. So I took Rhea with me on the last time, and I showed her one of the mummies, and it was this really awe-inspiring kind of individual that obviously was, they smoke the mummy, so it's like, its body is like kind of hardened and it's super black, and it just kind of in a pose where they have their hands kind of up like this and its legs are up, and it's kind of looking down, and they usually have some kind of item that belonged to this person on it. So and they're usually very like, it's very like not a spiritual thing, but it there's a lot of respect around these pieces because they're artifacts of their heritage, as well as family members, like great grandfathers or whatever, fierce warrior or somebody of utmost importance. Always, it's never just a single individual. It's always somebody that's high status. And so I had like a day or two of some downtime before I was working out my logistics to get back in over to into Jakarta. And I asked my friend, I said, hey, is there another mummy we can go see? He goes, yeah, I know the other one is, but we got to go. I know where it's at realistically, but we got to go find it. And I was like, okay, cool. So, I hired a guy or a truck so we could take a truck, and my buddy was driving around. We drove about an hour or so outside of town and drove through these little alleyway kind of places in the jungle. It's not an alleyway, but they're kind of like where the hut communities are. You got to drive through these little areas and all this stuff. And we pulled up to somebody's kind of front of their house, and it's the typical thatched fencing, and then there's a honai, which is the hut, and they've got multiple honais along that, so they're all living in huts still. And we pulled up, and I had another good friend of mine with me who's another Dani village, who's this little guy. He's like 4 feet tall. He's awesome. And we pull up there and we talked to the guy, and they came out kind of like questioning. First they saw a white guy and they were like, what's going on? And I told them, I was like, I'm not military. Don't worry, blah, blah, blah. I'm just here taking photos of, of culture and everything. And we heard that you had a mummy. And they're like, well, let me go talk to somebody about it. So it was like 20, 25 minutes or whatever. They came back. It's like, yeah, we have a mummy. And I was like, well, here, let me give you a little bit of money. So I gave them like $10, and they were all super excited. So they brought us into the village. And we walked in there, and there was like 2 or 3 huts that were positioned in the back. And normally what they'll do is there's a hut that the mummy will basically live in. And the hut is based off, it's like, it's their home essentially. So we get in there, and, I'm talking to this and trying to figure out like logistically, like where we're at, where we're going and all this stuff. And we get in, and they say, okay, the mummy's in here, and I was like, can I go in? They're like, yeah, come with me. So I stoop down into this like little hut, and it's pitch black inside. And then my eyes get adjusted through like some of the light that's coming through the thatch on the ceiling. And it's just this super humid, moist, musky kind of air. Wow. And it's like very like smoky, very smoky. And, but it's just like, I'm looking around, and one of the guys is in there. There's some guys in there, and I didn't see them, and they light a cigarette, and I see the cigarette light up, and I'm like, oh, hey, how are you? Blah, blah, blah. And, they're very cautious because I'm an outsider. And, and then the guy, I could hear him talking to me. He's like, oh, he gave us some money. So then they became my best friend. And I could see light coming through, and I'm like looking around. I just see like probably like inches and inches of like soot just built up on everywhere inside of the hut and around it. And there's all these like big boar pig tusks and jowls like hanging on the wall. There's multiple sets of bows and arrows in here. This must be like a hunter's hut, and there's bone necklaces and all this stuff everywhere. And I'm just like drooling at all this stuff, looking around and all this. And then there's a box in the middle, and it's a red shellacked box. And I'm like, okay, it's got to be in there. And in the front has like mesh on the front. So I'm kind of like peering through and everything. And they motioned to me that the mummy's in there. And I'm like, oh, okay, great. So I kind of get down, and I didn't bring my big camera gear with me too, because I obviously didn't want to show a lot of like possessions to say I had money. So I just had my phone with me, and, a few hundred rupiah in my pocket to pay people. And I left all my other shit where I was staying. And they open up the entrance of this box, and it's like this mesh cage with a lock on it, and all this. It was weird. And there was this mummy in there, and he was kind of just hung in like that. And he had a big feather on his head, and he had a bunch of like, things growing on him, like mycelia and all this weird stuff. And I'm just like, oh, he's got to be putting off something bad for your lungs for sure.
Yeah.
And they had like a couple bowls in there of rice to draw in all the moisture. So he didn't, because he wasn't sitting in the sun. A lot of times they'll bring him out in the sun, and it kind of bakes him even more. And he was in there. He was just really gnarly looking. And out of all the mummies I've seen, they've always been just like, wow. Like, it's always funny. Like I guess I'm like superstitious sometimes. I'm always like, it's nice to meet you. I always say that to them. I was like, it's nice to meet you. I'd like to take a photo. But this one, I was just like, man, it is not nice to meet you. There is something off on this thing. And it was just super creepy to me.
Wow.
It could have been just the environment too, because I had all these Papuans around me in this little dark hut, and I was photographing this mummy. But I got some really interesting photos of it. And if people are interested, just, I'll share them. I'm going to put some of them in the new book, but so I've seen 3 out of the 4. I'm looking forward to trying to go find the other one. I heard it's high up in the mountains, but it's a really fascinating process. But this was the first one that really kind of creeped me out. So I didn't stay too long, and the guys were all in there watching me, kind of sketchy and all that stuff. So that's how
you could disappear, and who would ever even know? Man,
you'd be gone in a second. Nobody would find you. Nobody would find you. Nobody would say anything and be gone. I mean, that's why I tell people, they're like, oh, I'm like, it's really dangerous. Like people will take you, not just from the OPM that'll either kill you or hold you for ransom and drag you through the highlands for like God knows how long. Or you just get shot by somebody with an arrow or killed with a stick or a rock, and you're toast, man. So
that's it. Yeah.
It's crazy. But so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this episode up, unless there was anything else that it was, on your mind, Keith, that you wanted to bring up or talk about.
There's always stuff on my mind. You know that.
I know, man. I know. We got to save it for the next time then, I guess.
Yeah, I'm good.
Well, once again, thank you so much for coming on. Love you, man. I'm glad you're healthy and doing well.
Yeah. Thanks.
And I'm glad you're on the on this awesome Boelens team. I guess there's just like the Boelens family, where we're all just kind of enjoying working with animals, man.
Yeah.
Just having a blast working with animals and learning about animals. That's what it's about.
100%.
It's great. So, all right. Well, thank you guys for joining us. I'm going to end this episode in a few seconds. Please follow, like, share, whatever it is you guys do. The Trap Talk Reptile Network, of course, Boelens Python Roundtable, and Project Black Python. And I will see you guys next time. Thanks again, Keith, for coming on, man. Have a great day. Enjoy painting the house. I'm not.
Take care, buddy.
All right. We'll talk to you.
Bye.
If you're looking at ways to help out with my research and project, I've set up a donation account through PayPal, boelenspythonconservation@gmail.com, link below, which will allow you to send donations. All donations are used to purchase new field equipment, help with logistics, as well as help support these local communities that I've been working with for years. Once again, thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you on the next episode.